My hand was shaking so hard the pen skipped off the signature line the first time. Someone behind me laughed. Not loud, just a short breath through the nose, the kind of laugh you give when you already know how something ends. The courtroom smelled like old carpet and coffee gone cold. My fingers left a damp print on the paper. A voice leaned close to my ear, soft enough that only I could hear it. "You should have read the whole thing, sweetheart." I picked the pen back up. I signed. And I smiled because she had no idea what page 14 said. My name is Renata Voss. I'm 44 years old, and 11 years ago I built a home renovation and design firm out of a card table in my garage with $2,300 in savings and a laptop that overheated if you ran it for more than an hour. By the time this story starts, Voss & Company had 18 employees, a portfolio of 40-plus custom builds, and a name that got repeated at dinner parties in 3 counties. My husband, Adrian, was a structural engineer. Between the two of us, we built a house on Larkspur Hill, 4,600 square feet, a house I designed down to the doorknobs, worth $1.4 million on paper and worth infinitely more to me because it was proof that the girl with $2,300 and an overheating laptop had made it. My mother-in-law, Corinne, had never once called that house yours. It was always Adrian's house, as if I'd been hired to decorate it. What I didn't know yet, standing in that courtroom about to sign my name to a piece of paper Corinne had spent 4 months maneuvering me into signing, was that the house wasn't really what was at stake that day. It was $890,000 in business assets she didn't know existed, and she was about to hand me the keys to take every dollar of it back. It started on a Tuesday in March, 11 months before that courtroom morning, at a family dinner I almost didn't attend. Corinne had on a cream silk blouse she only wore for what she called important company, a glass of Sancerre already at her elbow before anyone else had sat down. She poured a second one before the appetizers came out. Adrian was in the kitchen. I was setting the table when I heard her on the phone in the next room. Her voice pitched low but not low enough. "No, it's practically done," she said, and I heard the click of her wedding ring against the wine glass. "The lawyer says once she signs the postnup, everything Adrian and I need is protected. She still thinks it's about estate planning." A pause. A soft laugh. "She's not stupid, she's just trusting. It's almost sweet." I stood very still, a stack of napkins in my hand. "By Christmas," Corinne said, "that house is back in the family name. And so is the company once the trust language kicks in. She built it, but she signed the operating agreement Adrian drafted. She never checks anything. She just says thank you and cries a little." I set the napkins down without a sound. I walked back into the kitchen, kissed Adrian on the cheek, and asked if he needed help with the potatoes. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because if Corinne Voss thought I was the kind of woman who cried and said thank you without checking anything, I decided that night I would let her keep believing that for exactly as long as it took me to find out how deep this went. The next morning, I pulled the original Voss & Company operating agreement out of the fireproof filing box in our closet. Adrian had drafted the paperwork himself back when we formed the LLC. I trusted him completely and signed where he told me to sign. Buried in Section 9 in language dense enough to make your eyes slide right past it, was an amendment clause giving designated family trustees, unnamed at the time I signed, authority to restructure ownership percentages in the event of marital instability or estate reallocation. I read it 4 times before I understood what it meant. Adrian had left a door open 8 years ago, and someone had just found the key. I called our firm's attorney Marisol Reyes, under the pretense of a routine review. I didn't tell her what I'd overheard yet. I just asked her to walk me through every clause like I was hearing it for the first time. "This is unusual language for an LLC this size," Marisol said. "Who drafted this?" "My husband," I said. "A long time ago." "Did you have independent counsel review it before you signed?" I already knew the answer. I confronted Adrian first gently over coffee 3 days later. I told him I'd found the clause and asked what it meant. He didn't flinch. That was the part that hurt. "Mom's been through a lot with the estate stuff since Dad passed," he said, stirring his coffee slower than necessary. "She just wants everything protected in case something happens to us. It's not about you, Ren. It's just prudent structuring, tax efficiency, liability shielding. You know how these things work. It was a good lie. Smooth, reasonable, wrapped in enough financial language that a tired woman with 18 employees and a business to run might just nod and move on. I nodded. I moved on. Out loud. 2 weeks later, I found the draft postnuptial agreement in Adrian's email, forwarded from an address I didn't recognize. A private domain registered, according to a quick search, to a small estate planning firm 40 minutes from Corinne's house, not the family attorney we'd always used. The draft reclassified Larkspur Hill as a family legacy asset held in trust for future generations, with Corinne named as a co-trustee with veto power over any sale. Buried 3 pages deeper, a clause reclassifying any business entity founded during the marriage the same way. I sat at my kitchen table at 11:40 at night reading it twice, then a third time, my tea gone cold beside me. This wasn't protection. This was a legal blueprint to take the house and the business out of my hands and place them in Corinne's. The following Sunday, I arrived early to drop off a dessert for Corinne's book club and let myself in through the side door, the way I'd done for 11 years. I heard her before she saw me. She'll sign whatever Adrian puts in front of her, Corinne was telling her friend Beverly, ice clinking in a glass. That's the thing about women like Renata. Self-made they call themselves. So proud of building something from nothing that they never stop to ask who's holding the paperwork behind them. A laugh bright and easy. By spring, that house comes back where it belongs, and so does everything else she thinks is hers. Beverly laughed too. And Adrian's fine with this? Adrian does what I tell him, Corinne said. He always has. I stood in the hallway with a pie in my hands, and I did not walk in. The lie that unraveled everything came a month later. I'd asked Marisol quietly to pull the county filings on the estate planning firm Corinne was using. What she found wasn't estate planning at all. The firm had a pending malpractice complaint, and more importantly, Corinne had already used a near-identical trust restructuring 6 years earlier against her own sister Delphine over a family cabin worth $310,000. Delphine had signed a protective family trust document Corinne had drafted through the same firm. Within 18 months, the cabin was solely in Corinne's name, and Delphine hadn't spoken to her since. This wasn't a one-time act of overreach. It was a method, a rehearsed one. That was the night I stopped being hurt and started being precise. I made a decision at my kitchen table with the county filings spread out in front of me. Corinne needed to believe she was winning, so I gave her exactly that. I stopped bringing my laptop to family dinners. I let my voice go a little softer, a little more tired when anyone asked about the business. Oh, it's a lot some days, honestly. I don't know how much longer I can keep juggling all of it. I let my shoulders drop half an inch when I sat down at the table, let a sigh slip out before I answered simple questions. I asked Corinne twice in front of Adrian whether she thought I should just simplify things, sell off part of the company, make life easier. I watched her eyes light up both times. Internally, I was running the business harder than I ever had. Every filing, every contract, every dollar of that $890,000 in retained business assets was being quietly legally repositioned into a trust structure of my own. One Marisol built clean, ironclad, and entirely in my name, while I played a woman too tired to check her own paperwork. I let Corinne help me pick a family mediator for the post-nup discussions. I let her recommend her own attorney to streamline things. I said thank you. I said it a lot. I even let one tear slip during a signing session, right on cue, and watched her pat my hand like she was comforting a child. I thought, keep believing I don't read the fine print, Corinne. Keep laughing behind my back. Every laugh is a receipt, and I am saving every single one. The bait was simple. A document and a room. I told Adrian I wanted to get it all handled at once. The post-nup, the trust restructuring, everything, in one final court-adjacent signing session with both attorneys present, so I don't have to keep going through this piece by piece. It's exhausting. Corinne loved the idea. Of course she did. One clean signature and it would all be locked in before I could change my mind. What Corinne didn't know was that the document I would be signing that day had been rewritten. Marisol and I spent 6 weeks on it. The post-nup Corinne's attorney drafted still existed on paper. Same cover page, same font, same opening clauses to survive a glance. But attached as Exhibit C, in a clause referencing prior disclosed business malpractice and pattern of undue influence in prior family trust arrangements, page 14, was a fully documented account of the Delphine cabin case, the recorded county filings, and a clause that voided any trust reallocation obtained under those conditions. Corinne's own attorney had unknowingly certified a document that, buried in its own attachments, dismantled itself. I also asked Marisol to have a paralegal quietly record the pre-signing meeting, legal in our state with one-party consent, which meant me. My phone sat in my blazer pocket that morning, recording buzzing once when Adrian texted, "You good?" 10 minutes before we walked in. I watched Corinne's phone from across the table as she scrolled through the summary page Adrian's attorney handed her. She never once turned to page 14. She just smiled and reached for her pen. I sat with my hands folded, waiting. The signing session became public faster than I expected, because Corinne insisted on celebrating that same night, a dinner at her house. To close this chapter as a family, she said, with Beverly and 2 of her sisters invited. 12 people at a table set with the good china. Corinne raised her glass before the appetizers even arrived. "To new beginnings," she said, looking directly at me. "And to Renata, finally learning to let go of things that were never really hers to hold on to." A few uncomfortable laughs around the table. Adrian stared at his plate. "You know," Corinne went on, warmed by the wine and the audience, "some people spend their whole lives building something and never understand that building it doesn't mean you get to keep it. Family does. Blood does." She smiled at Beverly. "Renata's finally figured that out today in court in writing." I set down my fork. "I did sign something in court today," I said, my voice even unhurried. "Would you like to tell everyone what it says, Corinne? Since you're so proud of it." She blinked, still smiling. "It says the house comes home. And the business gets properly protected." "It says that on the cover page," I agreed. "Page 14 says something different." The table went quiet. "6 years ago," I said, "you did this to your sister Delphine. Same firm. Same language. A cabin worth $310,000. Reclassified as a family legacy asset, until it was only in your name. She hasn't spoken to you since." "I know, because it's filed with the county and I attached it every page to the document you signed this morning without reading." Corinne's face didn't move for a second. "That's not. You don't understand the context. I have a recording of you telling Beverly, back in March, that I'd sign whatever Adrian put in front of me, and that by spring the house and the company would come back where they belonged." I took my phone out and set it on the table, screen dark, not playing it, just present. "I don't need to play it. Your own attorney is already on the phone with mine right now. Because the trust clause you built your entire plan on just voided itself the moment you certified a document containing evidence of a documented pattern of coercive trust manipulation." "Adrian," Corinne turned sharp, "tell her this is insane." Adrian didn't say anything. He was looking at his phone where, I later learned, Marisol's office had already sent formal notice. I stood, picked up the folded copy of the post-nup I'd kept in my bag, and tore it once cleanly down the middle, setting both halves beside my untouched wine glass. "The house stays mine," I said quietly. "The company stays mine. And Corinne, I'd get a lawyer. A different one than last time." I sat back down and finished my dinner in silence. 2 weeks later, Delphine, Corinne's estranged sister, filed a civil complaint of her own, citing the same documented pattern, seeking damages on the cabin. The estate planning firm's malpractice complaint escalated to a state bar investigation once Marisol formally submitted our findings. In the 6 months that followed, the consequences arrived like a slow, deliberate ledger being balanced. The estate planning firm Corinne used lost its operating license after the state bar investigation confirmed a pattern of drafting trust documents designed to obscure asset reallocation clauses from one signing party. Delphine's case and mine were cited by name in the filing. Corinne's civil suit from Delphine settled for $275,000, plus the cabin reverting fully to joint ownership. 11 years too late to save the relationship, but not too late for the paper trail to matter. Adrian and I separated 4 months after that dinner. Not with shouting, with silence and with paperwork, most of it drafted by Marisol, all of it favoring the woman who'd actually read what she signed. He kept his engineering license. He did not keep access to Voss & Company, which the original trust clause I'd built now protected in full, all $890,000 of it, plus everything since. Corinne herself was quietly asked to step back from the family foundation board she'd chaired for 9 years, after 2 other board members, who'd heard about the Delphine case through the bar complaint, raised concerns about her handling of trust documents in the past. Through all of it, I made one decision I was proud of. I called every one of my 18 employees into the office personally, the week the separation became public, and told them nothing about their jobs, their contracts, or their benefits would change, because none of this had ever been about the business's future. It had been about protecting it. 2 of them cried. I gave everyone a $2,000 bonus that quarter out of my own pocket, not the company's, just to be sure they knew they'd never been part of the collateral. It was late November, 7 months after that dinner, when Corinne showed up at my door. It was raining, the kind of cold rain that gets into your collar. She stood on my porch in a coat that used to look expensive and now just looked wet. No umbrella. Her car, I noticed, parked 2 blocks down, as if she'd walked the last stretch to compose herself. "Renata," she said. Her voice had none of the silk left in it. "I don't have anywhere else. Adrian won't answer. The board won't answer. I just need somewhere to stay, just until things settle." I stood in the doorway, the warm light of the house I'd built spilling out onto the porch between us. "You told Beverly I'd sign whatever was put in front of me," I said, not unkindly, just plainly. "I read every page, Corinne. That's the whole story. I'm sorry it rained on your way here. I hope it clears up." I closed the door. Adrian's key stopped fitting the lock 3 weeks later. Once the transfer paperwork finalized, I changed very little else about the house. I kept the doorknobs I'd picked out myself 11 years ago, back when it was still just a drawing on a card table. That night, my partner, now Marisol, who I'd started seeing quietly 8 months after the separation, slowly, carefully, the way you build something you don't want to lose again, sat with me on the porch with 2 mugs of tea, watching the rain finally taper off. "You okay?" she asked. "I signed my name to a lot of paper this year," I said. "For the first time in a long time, I know exactly what every page said." She laughed, low and warm, and put her hand over mine. "Here's what I learned the hard way, at a table where they thought I wasn't reading closely enough to notice. People who try to take what you built almost always underestimate how carefully you'll defend it. Being underestimated isn't a weakness. It's the best cover you'll ever have. Read every page. Always read every page. If someone in your life has ever tried to laugh their way through a decision that was never theirs to make, what did you do? Tell me in the comments. If this story hit home, hit like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.